Let's look back then. We discussed this yesterday. The head of the Metropolitan Police has defended the policing of the coronation after 6 anti-monarchy protesters were arrested, detained for hours, and then released without charge. We interviewed one of those people on the programme yesterday. Sir Mark Rowley said it was unfortunate those arrested could not protest, but he supported the officers' actions. He said there have been concerning threats to the coronation. Let's have another look at this through the lens of the police. Steve Hartshorn is the National Chair at the Police Federation of England and Wales. Afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Always good to see you. Do you widely echo Sir Mark Rowley's points on this, that, it was unfortunate, sadly these things happen, but he did support the actions of the officers who made the arrests?
I do. I read his article with interest because obviously not being inside the Met Police at the moment, I've got no access to the intel. I wasn't on duty that day. And when you look at it, you think, OK, events have taken place, but we need to know more. And it's interesting how so many social commentators make comments about what we as police officers do or don't do. It's interesting to point out that we have to get some of these actions right every single time to stop demonstrations and protests taking place to disrupt lawful events. Opportunists only have to get it right once. So if Sir Mark Rowley's backing the officers based on the intelligence that he's got, I've got no choice but to think, actually, he's far more informed than I am. It would make sense to, at this stage, accept what he says. He's got the intel and go with what he's saying. Because we can be, I would suggest, pretty sure that, a bunch of cops didn't just jump out of a van and go, yeah, that lot over there, let's go and nick them. That didn't happen. No. There would have been much more to that story. Absolutely. On that kind of high-profile event, it's there to protect public safety and also enable the event to take place. There's a structure in place called Gold, Silver and Bronze, where the Gold Command for the day, I believe it's Commander Findlay, will be accessing some of the intelligence with subordinate officers to make decisions. They will then direct those officers that were involved, I believe it was the TSG, which is the Met's Territorial Support Group, and others, to that particular area to deal with things that they see before them, to either act on the intelligence you've got, something that's right in front of them, or not negate it. And then those officers made a decision based on what's in front of them at that time and decided that arrest was the necessary, proportionate, legal act to do so.
And they would have had, on anything as big as this, I would imagine, regardless of what it is, whether it's a march about, fox hunting or stop the war, anything that's got tens of thousands of people involved, there would be information coming through all the time. And some of it will be legit, some of it will be false, some of it will be speculation. But nonetheless, there will be a mountain of info that the police and intel that the police are having to deal with. We know that there were suggestions that there were some agitators who were dressed up as stewards and things like that. There were suggestions of people wanting to interfere with, statues and daub and paint and locking on, as they call it, etc. All of these things would have come through, and at some point the police have to make a judgment.
Absolutely. And there's two things that we get. We get information and we can get intelligence. And you've got to be really careful on what you take as credible. The information that sometimes comes in can be bogus, so you've got to dismiss it quite quickly. But then you get proper intel from trusted sources, which, if the police have done their job properly and got the right intel, that will lead officers, as we've already discussed, to be directed to a certain area to investigate further. Then they make a decision, because that was such a high-profile event. If that had gone different to plan, think of the carnage that could have happened. If those loud noises had affected the military horses, you're looking at upwards of a tonne of horse, 1,000 kilos potentially, impacting on either the stagecoach, members of the public, members of the military, members of the police. We'd then get the blame for saying you didn't do your job properly. And the deprivation of liberty is always taken very, very seriously. So much so that I think late Friday night, the Home Secretary and Mayor Khan were briefed because of the rapidly changing intel picture. So, I see the Mayor's calling for an inquiry. He will have been privy to lots of information beforehand. It's what's changed between then and that event. Maybe nothing, maybe something. So, I do back what Sir Mark Rowley's saying.
Indeed, and Sadiq Khan is essentially the Police and Crime Commissioner for London. He is, has a very senior role in charge of policing in that respect. So, anything that is there would be, one assumes, briefed to him like it would be briefed to any other senior component within the story.
Absolutely. PCC's mayors have a role to play, but they should not be impacting on operational delivery by people like Mark Rowley and his team below to get on and do the job. Otherwise, we start policing by committee, and that's not the role of the PCC or the Mayor. They're there to assist and support, take into account the public views, let the professionals do their job. And if people are getting so vexed about this, come and join the police, become a special constable, come and do the job we have to do. It's not particularly easy, but I think on the day my colleagues got it right. It was a safe, it was a good event, and it was a spectacle for the world to be proud of.
And in terms of arresting people, the average cop, I'm sure when you first become a police officer, making your first arrest is a big deal. And then after about probably the 17th, you think, oh, I've got to go through this again. Yeah. But of course, when an arrest takes place, that officer is off the street for that period of time. And in a case such as this, it wasn't just one officer, there were multiple officers involved in that arrest, and the van that takes them off. In an operation this big, the Met don't want to be removing personnel from the streets unless they have to.
Absolutely. You know, people are brought in from across London, across the country to do the job. Yeah. They're there to be on a fixed post. You might have some capability for some reserves, but they're already in the footprint of the event. So knowing how the security is locked down, you need to keep them there. An arrest is probably the last option that they would consider doing if there aren't other ways to negate what is possibly, you know, the issue they've got to deal with.
What is morale like in the police at the moment, Steve? We did a police week a month or so ago, and we've talked a lot before and since then as well about, you know, certain cases that have not been fabulous headlines for the police, anything but, and some very disturbing cases as well. But broadly speaking, they are, and I know I say this till I'm blue in the face, these are an absolute minority of serving officers, something most officers don't even recognise in their own force and have never seen themselves in the respect of some of these horrible cases. Are things changing at all? Is there a turning point here that the police, particularly the Met, I know that's your force, they've been through a lot but are now coming out the other side? Is that fair?
I think they've gone through a lot. We are going to go through a lot. I don't see any cessation of the negative stories for at least 2 years, because potentially my colleagues that have been arrested, committed criminal offences today, that could take 2, maybe 3 years to go through the criminal justice system. So it's the constant negativity and criticism, sometimes fairly justified, otherwise not. It's commentary which isn't welcome, it's ill-informed. It has a drip, drip, drip effect on my colleagues that think, what is the point in doing it?
What is your relationship like then with the Home Secretary? What is it like with the Met Commissioner, for example?
Well, this afternoon I'm due to meet Sir Mark Rowley for one of our sort of catch-up meetings to see how things are from the National Federation perspective, because arguably he's the top cop in the country. It's nice to have those updates, so to talk about things that affect national policing. Still trying to get some dates in the diary to have more one-to-ones with the Home Secretary and the Police Minister. It's incredibly difficult with things that we want to say, want to ask and put forward with some solutions to make it better, not only for my colleagues, but also the public. You know, we never ask for anything that's unreasonable, and I've said it, so I'm blue in the face, that come and speak to us, we're there to help, we give solutions. I think we're very credible.
Are the government now claiming that the 20,000 have been replenished?
Yes, they've come out, I think it's 20,951.
There you go, they've gone over and above.
Yeah, well, we're asking for clarity because we want the full-time equivalent. Is that number the same that we had in 2010 as the full-time officers? We always quote 20,000 FTE, that's full-time equivalent officers. Let's make sure, if it's right, brilliant. If it's not, the public should be concerned, because in that intervening period of the last decade, there's been a 4 million population increase. So it could be we don't actually have a like-for-like comparison. Yeah. Again, we're asking for it. Give us the true figures, and then we'll see where we stand. Indeed. Good to see you, Steve. Thank you for coming in. Steve Hartshorn is the National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales. With us here on TalkTV.